going through showcased the strength of our community. And once again, what we saw was the worst of times, bringing out the very best in Australians. But it also exposed the vulnerabilities in our economy, the uncertainty of insecure work, the unsustainable costs of childcare, the neglect of our skills and training system, the digital divide in access to the NBN for homes and small businesses, the pressure on our health system, but importantly, the pressure on our healthcare workers, the absolute crisis in aged care, and the risk to business and industry from our position at the end of global supply chains. These problems aren't new. Most are the inevitable end result of a decade of cuts, mismanagement, neglect, and a government that's just focused on itself, with the real-world consequences felt by hard-working Australians, like today's news, that real wages have gone backwards yet again, a fall of 2.7%. What a hit. This delivers the biggest cuts to real wages in more than 20 years. Under Scott Morrison, real wages are plummeting while the costs of living are skyrocketing. Australian workers are paying the price for a decade of bad policy and economic failures, while Scott Morrison says he should be rewarded with another 3 years because he's just getting started. The choice Australians have to make this Saturday is which party can be trusted to solve these problems. The Liberal government that created them, a Prime Minister who denied them and then blamed them on someone else, or a Labor Party driven by a determination to learn the lessons of the pandemic, to face up to the big challenges confronting our country and to bring people together to build a better future. If you needed any more proof that Scott Morrison is determined to learn nothing from the last 3 years, you only need to look at what he has said in the last week. Now, he started off the week by arguing that the workers who carried our economy through the pandemic, they went out to work, they risked their own health to serve others for $20.33 an hour. What did he say? They couldn't afford $1 extra an hour. $1 an hour. He believes they should get a real wage cut. And remember this, government said that low wages were a key feature of their economic architecture. It's not bad luck, it's bad policy that are leading to a decline in real wages and a decline in people's living standards. That's their idea. That is one thing they have delivered on. The Prime Minister finished the week by saying that working people should raid their super to fix Australia's housing crisis. So the Liberals believe you should lose one key asset in order to get another. With Labor and our plans, you keep both. The Prime Minister's most remarkable statement, though, was that his biggest flaw is that he's too quick to solve problems. I'll just leave that hanging there for a bit so you think about it. The bloke who said, when Australia was burning down, I don't hold a hose, mate. The bloke who said, when we were way back in the queue in the developed world or somewhere in the 90s about rollout vaccines, what was his response? It's not a race. And on every issue that you can think of, what's his response? That's not my job. His 4 favourite words. The only thing that Scott Morrison actually does quickly when there's a crisis is blame someone else. Well, the Liberals won't change, the Prime Minister can't change, and the only way to change Australia for the better is to change the government this Saturday. Learning the lessons of the pandemic run right through Labor's plans for the future. Our plan for more secure jobs and better pay, cheaper childcare, Jobs and Skills Australia, working with business to identify skills gaps and then connecting TAFE and training with good jobs and growing businesses, expanding access to the NBN, strengthening Medicare and making it easier for people to see a doctor, fixing the crisis in aged care, 24/7 nurses, more time to care, more accountability and better food, a national reconstruction fund to revitalise local manufacturing and see that Australia makes things here again, and our Powering Australia plan that seizes the opportunities of climate action to create jobs and boost industry. All of this is important, but more than that, it's also urgent. We simply can't afford 3 more years of the same. The challenges facing our country are here right now. Our economic competitors are reskilling and modernising now. There is a cost of living crisis now. Fair work and fair wages are under attack now. The security dynamic in our region is changing now. There is a crisis in aged care right now. Climate change is happening now. Australia simply cannot afford 3 more years of drift, 3 more years of more of the same, waste and rorts, drift and absolute failure. We need to change the government, and we need to change the government now. Not just because of the irreversible damage that will be done 3 more years of neglecting aged care or cuts to Medicare, not just because families can't afford 3 more years of everything going up except for their wages, but because there are opportunities that we have to grasp, reach out and grab them right now. Labor's plans for a better future are designed to fix the urgent problems facing our country, and our policies are about seizing the once-in-a-generation opportunities that are right there before us. Take our Powering Australia plan. Making Australia a renewable energy superpower is the fastest way to cut pollution and the most effective way to act on climate change. But it's also the best way to cut power bills for families and businesses. It will save families $275 on average a year. Powering Australia will help protect Australia's precious natural environment for the next generation, and it will create new jobs and new industries. Our plan to embrace clean energy will deliver 604,000 new jobs by 2030. 5 out of every 6 of those will be in the regions. It will attract $52 billion in private sector investment. It will ensure that renewables are 82% of the national energy market by 2030. Importantly, we will end the climate wars. I don't know what it takes for this government to recognise what is happening out there. We've had the bushfires, we've had the floods. The intensity of these events has had a real impact, not just on our environment, but on people's lives, but also on our economy. But they just sit there and argue, Barnaby Joyce having right of veto over the whole show. We can't afford 3 more years of that. Importantly, our plan is about bringing people together, finding common ground to advance common interests. The how is just as important as the what, and the how in a government I lead will be about bringing people together. This policy is supported by the Business Council of Australia, the Australian Industry Group, National Farmers Federation, the Australian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and the ACTU. I mention that diverse collection of supporters because I view our approach on Powering Australia as a template for tackling the big challenges facing our country. On my first day as Labor leader back in 2019, I said that Australians have conflict fatigue. If they had it then, they have it even more now. And on climate, rather than rally the same troops to dig a deeper trench in the same spot, I wanted to find new allies. I wanted us to look for solutions, not arguments, because I believe the best way to achieve progress is to bring people together. That's the approach that I've taken throughout my political career. Have a look at what I did as Infrastructure Minister, create Infrastructure Australia, bringing together a board with Rod Eddington and Ken Henry and Kerry Schott and Heather Ridout and others. Projects being assessed according to their merits and their economic value to productivity, not their political location. And that's the approach I want to take if I'm elected as Prime Minister. I want to look for solutions, not look for arguments and wedges. I want to work with all premiers and chief ministers on how we can make the Federation more functional and more cooperative. I want to rebuild faith in the capacity of politics to find answers, not just start fights. Of course, rebuilding trust in politics also means demonstrating genuine accountability. And that's why a Labor government I lead will put forward legislation for a National Anti-Corruption Commission before this year is over. And one of the first things I will do if I'm elected Prime Minister on Saturday is to bring business, employer groups and unions, civil society groups together in an employment summit here in Canberra to collaborate on secure work and ensure enterprise bargaining is working more effectively. Because bringing business and unions together at the enterprise bargaining table with productivity gains as a focal point is how we increase both profits and wages without adding to inflationary pressure. This is the fundamental economic challenge right now, and we must view government, business, unions and employers as partners in tackling it. A Labor government would have a unique opportunity to restore the momentum that is already underway between the ACTU and COSBA, making workplace relations for small businesses simpler and more accessible. In spirit, a Labor government will consult with small business and unions in the lead up to our employment summit to identify and implement practical ways that the Fair Work system can be made simpler, fairer and easier for all parties. Small businesses are the engines of our economy and also the hardest hit by the pandemic. They need a government that supports them as they recover and grow. Promoting smooth workplace relations is one way that we can work together to enhance efficiency and productivity. We will aim to deliver outcomes through cooperation, acknowledging that the best answers usually come from the people directly involved. Working with business, bringing people together is how a Labor government I lead will build an economy that's more resilient, more diversified, but importantly also more productive. And one of the key reforms that we will deliver, one that is low inflation, high productivity, and provides real cost of living relief, is of course the centrepiece of my first budget reply, cheaper childcare. Now, our plan for cheaper childcare will deliver meaningful, ongoing for families struggling with cost of living. But as important and urgent as that saving for families is, the benefits of our cheaper childcare plan reach far beyond that. Reforming the childcare system is not welfare. It is economic reform. The childcare system currently acts as a disincentive for parents and mums to return to full-time work. What sort of system says that if you work a 4th or 5th day, you actually might lose money? It might cost you money. That costs those families, but it costs businesses as well because you don't have the career paths. It feeds right through to women's retirement incomes at the end of their working lives as well. Our plan is workforce participation and boost productivity. It's a clear-cut way to grow the economy without adding to inflation. It is the single largest budget commitment we are making at this election. And we've had it out there for 3 years. It will break down one of the biggest barriers to the full and equal participation of women in the economy. Through a decade of Liberal government, Australia has fallen to 70th in the world for women's economic participation And we've gone from being the 24th most equal country in the world for women, 24th to 50th. Not really a source of pride, is it? 24th to 50th under this government. Across the country, too many working women are underappreciated, underpaid and disrespected. A Labor I lead will do everything in our power to change that, including implementing every single recommendation of the Respect at Work report and making pay equity an objective of the Fair Work Act. We will create expert panels for the care and community sector workforce, vital female-dominated industries that have endured decades of low pay and poor conditions. And Labor welcomes a decision by the Fair Work Commission that grant millions of Australians access to 10 days paid and family violence leave. But on the union, but a Labor government will introduce legislation in the next Parliament to make 10 days domestic and family violence leave the law of the land. Now, if Labor is successful this Saturday, we will inherit the worst of incoming government since Federation, $1 trillion of debt. This government has borrowed more, taxed more, and spent than Labor, and delivered so much less. To build a better future, we need a better budget. Labor is committed to being responsible economic managers. We believe the quality of our investment. It's why the budget strategy that Jim Chalmers and outlined earlier in the campaign is so important. The government is the most wasteful since Federation. It's got worse. Its budget is absolutely riddled with rorts and weighed down with waste. $10 billion of waste have been rorts. The Park and Ride scheme, you had car parks that was for commuters that was actually a pension there. Big support for firms whose profits were actually increasing. On submarines that will never be built. That's why they don't have anywhere near enough to show for $1 trillion in debt. A debt that they had doubled before the pandemic. And it's why we'll target the waste and rorts in the Morrison government's budget. Now, I said for some time that focus will be on quality investment. That's why we've targeted the areas. They're targeted and responsible investments. They are a fraction of what the government has wasted. And it will be about strengthening the economy, increasing productivity and supporting families. And I announce today that Labor will reduce uncommitted funding in the Community Development Grants Program by $350 million, and we will return the $400 million regional